Okay, let's unpack this. If you follow tennis, you know there's one matchup that really just electrifies the sport right now, one rivalry that feels like it's going to define the next era.
Totally.
And this Sunday, on the biggest clay court in the world, well, we get its next, perhaps most significant chapter.
The air in Paris isn't just buzzing, you know? It feels charged, like really charged with anticipation. Stade Roland Garros, Sunday, June 8th, 2025. This isn't just any French Open men's singles final. It's a proper heavyweight clash.
Absolutely. It's world number one, Jannik Sinner, going up against world number two, Carlos Alcaraz, the top two players on the planet.
Facing off.
For a Grand Slam title on clay. I mean, it's the match everyone's been talking about, waiting for, analyzing from, well, every possible angle.
Yeah, and to get ready for this huge encounter, we've gathered a ton of information. We've pulled insights and analysis from sources like Sportskeeda, NBC Sports, The Grandstand, the official ATP Tour head-to-head stats.
Right.
And we've even dived into those, vibrant, sometimes pretty opinionated discussions happening on Reddit and the Talk Tennis Forum.
And our mission in this deep dive is pretty clear.
Yeah.
We are going to try and synthesize all of these perspectives, all these bits of information. We want to pull out the essential insights, understanding the history here, dissecting their contrasting styles, tracing their very different paths through the draw to get here.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, really grasping the huge stakes that are online, not just for these two incredible athletes, but, for the very future direction of men's tennis.
Let's set the stage, then. We're talking about a Grand Slam final, right? The absolute pinnacle of the sport, held at the iconic Stade Roland Garros in Paris. The prize money alone kind of reflects the scale. It's a staggering 56,352,000 round.
Wow.
Yeah. And for those of you looking to watch, the sources mention the coverage details. In the U.S., it's TNT Sports, True TV, or streaming on HBO Max. UK viewers have Eurosport, and Canadians can tune in to TSN or RDS.
Good to know. But while the logistics are important, what's truly remarkable, and the sources really highlight this, is the historical significance of this specific final. It's not just a world number one versus number two match. It's happening in a very rare context.
That's exactly right. What's particularly fascinating here is the historical echo. Multiple sources point out that this is actually the first time since 1984.
1984, wow.
Yeah, since 1984 that both the men's and women's singles finals at Roland Garros feature the top two seeds. On the women's side, like you said, it's Sabalenka against Goff, another massive top two battle.
A sign of the times, maybe.
Very
clear leaders emerging.
Could be. Indeed. And for the men's final specifically, seeing the world number one and number two facing off at a major, the sources confirm this is the first time it's happened at any Grand Slam since the 2013 U.S. Open.
Which was Djokovic and Nadal, right?
Exactly, Djokovic and Nadal. And if you go further back this century, it's only the third time overall. The other one was the 2000 Australian Open final, Agassi and Kafelnikov.
Okay, so this is genuinely rare territory.
It really is. Just reaching this point, with the undisputed top two players in the world standing across the net from each other with a major title on the line, is a historically charged event. It kind of immediately elevates the whole thing before a single ball is even struck.
Okay, historical backdrop, check. Stakes immediately apparent just from the rankings. But the journey here to this final, it hasn't been the same for these two guys. Not at all. In fact, the sources paint a picture of, pretty contrasting paths through the Roland Garros draw.
They really, really do. Let's start with world number one, Jannik Sinner. Across the board, the sources consistently describe his run in terms like dominant fashion or utterly dominant.
And unlike Alcaraz, Sinner got to the final having barely been tested, right? At least not in terms of sets dropped.
Precisely. The standout statistic, and you see this everywhere, Sportskeeda, NBC Sports, others, is that Sinner hasn't lost a single set, not one, in his 6 matches leading up to the final.
Just think about that. 6 matches, Grand Slam, top competition, on clay. And nobody could even force a 4th set.
Nope. He beat Arthur Rinderknecht, Richard Gasquet, Jiří Lehecka, Andrei Rublev, Alexander Bublik, and then, in the semifinal, the ultimate test on clay.
Novak Djokovic, the defending champion, 24-time slam winner, arguably the go-8 on clay alongside Rafa.
Exactly. And Sinner took him down in straight sets, 6-4, 7-5, 7-6, taking the tiebreak 7-3. Now, while the scoreline looks dominant, the match wasn't totally smooth sailing, especially that third set. Djokovic actually held 3 set points on Sinner's serve at 5-4.
And As one source put it, I like this phrase, Sinner aced the test. Didn't just save them, he held strong under massive pressure.
He absolutely did. Held firm, pushed it to a tiebreak, and then played a really decisive breaker, winning it pretty comfortably, 7-3.
Yeah.
He also had a little wobble in the second set, wanted a break.
Right.
Only for Djokovic to immediately break back, but Sinner's response, immediate, decisive, broke Djokovic again in the very next game and served out the set on his second try. It just showed his mental strength, even in those pressure moments.
It says so much about his level right now. And Djokovic himself, after the match, basically acknowledged how good Sinner's been. There's a quote in one source saying it was good not to get a bagel or breadstick from Sinner here tonight. He's been giving those quite a bit this tournament.
Yeah.
That kind of comment from Djokovic, it really underscores just how high Sinner's level has been.
It highlights his incredible consistency through the whole tournament, and the sources dig into his serving stats, too, which are, frankly, a bit ridiculous. Sportskeeda notes he's only dropped serve 3 times total in 6 matches.
3 times.
3 times. Twice in the first round against Rinderknech, and just that one single break against Djokovic in the semi. A user on the Talk Tennis forum looked at the overall breakpoint stats and called his ratio 31 breaks of serve for him, only broken 3 times. He called it insane.
Insane is right. That level of solidity on serve plus the aggression on return, that's just a brutal combination for opponents.
It is. And this dominance, it isn't just Roland Garros. The Australian Open source points out Sinner is coming into this final on a streak of 29 consecutive sets won at the majors.
29 straight sets.
29. That's an open-era achievement only bettered by absolute legends. Federer, Nadal, McEnroe. That's the company he's in. And his overall Grand Slam winning streak is at 20 matches heading into Sunday.
Okay, so that suggests a player who's really figured out how to maintain peak performance consistently across the biggest events.
Yeah.
That's rare. Formidable.
Exactly. So you have Sinner arriving spotless, no sets lost, dismantled everyone, including the defending champ, riding these incredible major streaks. Now let's flip to Carlos Alcaraz's journey. The picture painted by the sources, quite different.
Yeah, the word bumpy comes up a lot, doesn't it?
Yes, his path is frequently described using words like more bumpy by Sportskeeda or others like NBC Sports. Just note simply that he dropped sets.
A pretty stark contrast to Sinner's perfect record through the draw.
Exactly. While Sinner went 18-0 in sets, Alcaraz dropped a set in 4 of his 6 matches on the way here. He got past Giulio Zeppieri, Fabian Morosen, Damir Dzumhur, Ben Shelton, Tommy Paul. That was a pretty straightforward quarterfinal. And then Lorenzo Musetti in the semi.
Right, the semi against Musetti ended with a retirement in the 4th set, which maybe hides some of the challenges Alcaraz faced earlier in that match.
It does a bit. The Sportskeeda write-up on that match really highlights some of that bumpiness they talk about. Alcaraz lost the first set after playing what they called a sloppy service game. Then in the second set, even though he went up a break twice. And even served for the set at 6-5. He couldn't close it out. Musetti broke back both times, forced a tiebreak.
So moments of vulnerability there, difficulty closing things out.
Definitely present in that match.
Yeah.
But here's where you see that famous Alcaraz resilience, his ability to just flick a switch and elevate his game. As Sportskeeda notes, in that second set tiebreak, Alcaraz raised his level, played with laser-like precision, and it seemed to just open the floodgates. He won the breaker convincingly, then dominated the third set, handed out a bagel before Musetti's injury stopped the fourth.
The sources also mentioned that, especially early against Musetti, Alcaraz was actually getting overwhelmed from the baseline by Musetti's shot making. That suggests he was being outplayed for a bit and had to really dig deep and figure things out.
It really highlights a key difference in their paths, doesn't it? Alcaraz has been forced to adapt, to problem solve, to battle his way through matches during the tournament. Sources like Sportskeeda mention his ability to recover within matches, maybe improving his first serve percentage or finding his forehand range after a slow start. The Australian Open source specifically points to his intensity and those high-speed shots, giving him the confidence, especially in slams, to come back even if he's down a set or two, and just his ability to maneuver himself into winning positions even when things aren't quite clicking perfectly.
So you've got Sinner, who's shown this almost unprecedented level of consistent, dominant, almost error-free tennis to get here, looking like he's peaking perfectly. And then you have Alcaraz, who's navigated challenges, shown some vulnerabilities, but proved his incredible resilience, his adaptability, his ability to raise his game when needed. It's such a classic contrast. Smooth sailing versus battling through adversity.
And this contrast in their journeys just sets the stage perfectly for diving into their history against each other, their head-to-head record, which is, you could argue, the most compelling and evenly matched rivalry in tennis right now.
Okay, let's talk numbers then. What's the overall head-to-head look like based on what we've seen?
Well, if you include their meeting way back in a Challenger in 2019, Alcaraz has the overall lead at 8-4. But if you focus just on the main tour-level matches, the record stands at 7-4 in favor of Alcaraz.
Okay, 7-4 Alcaraz. And on clay, the surface for Sunday.
On clay, specifically, Alcaraz also holds the edge. He leads 3-1 in their previous clay court meetings. And despite facing off in all sorts of tournaments and stages, this Roland Garros final, it's actually their very first meeting in a Grand Slam final.
Really? First Slam final?
Yep. They've played in 2 other championship matches at lower levels, like Masters or 500s, and they split those 1-1, but never with a slam on the line.
But, okay, while the overall numbers slightly favor Alcaraz, the recent trend is really striking, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and this is a point hammered home across many sources, ATP Tour stats, NBC Sports, forum discussions. Carlos Alcaraz has won the last 4 consecutive matches against Jannik Sinner.
4 in a row.
4 in a row.
Yeah.
This recent run is critical context heading into Sunday. A user on Talk Tennis specifically flagged that 4-match winning streak.
And this isn't just winning, it's winning the last 4 against the guy who is now world number 1.
Yeah.
That strongly suggests Alcaraz has maybe found something, a formula that works against Sinner lately.
It really does suggest that. Let's maybe dive into some of those key past encounters mentioned in the sources, because they really provide the narrative backbone of this rivalry and tell us so much about these 2 players.
Yeah, let's do it. Where should we start? Most recent.
Let's start with the most recent, because it's freshest and on the same surface. The 2025 Italian Open final. On clay, just last month in Rome, Alcaraz won that one 7-6-5, 6-1.
Okay, 6-1 in the second set. That's pretty decisive after a tight first.
It was. And it was a significant win for Alcaraz, not just for the title, but because he snapped Sinner's incredible 26-match winning streak.
Right. Sinner was on fire before that, though some commenters online, like on the Grandstand forum, mentioned Sinner was playing his first tournament back after a 3-month ban. They felt that was a valid excuse, or at least a factor in that loss.
Well, that perspective is definitely out there in the discussions, yeah. But Alcaraz himself, according to the ATP source, was incredibly proud of how he played mentally and tactically in that Rome final. He felt he kept a really high level throughout. And that win also saw Alcaraz tie Sinner for the most tour-level titles won by players born in the 2000s. A small detail, maybe, but again, it just underlines how closely matched they are in their career so far. The ATP source also mentioned the real respect between them, noting the heartfelt hug they shared at the net.
Okay, moving back a bit to the 2024 China Open final. Hard court this time. Alcaraz won that too, but it was a 3-set battle. 6-7-6, 6-4, 7-6-3. Sounds like that one really encapsulated the rivalry.
Oh, absolutely. The ATP Tour source called it a marathon match, 3 hours, 21 minutes, longest final in Beijing history. They described it as a mental chess match. And think about the swings in that one. Alcaraz is up 5-2 in the first set tiebreak and loses it.
Oh, sure.
Right. Then in the deciding tiebreak, he goes down 3-0. Looks like it might be slipping away again, but then he just reels off 7 consecutive. It's extraordinary resilience, isn't it? Alcaraz even said afterwards that these are the kinds of matches that inspire people, get them watching and playing tennis, acknowledging the drama. His coach, Ferrero, was apparently brought to tears courtside, tells you something about the intensity, and Sinner's take was that they just push each other to the absolute limit.
Okay, then the direct predecessor to Sunday's match, the 2024 Roland Garros semifinal. Alcaraz won that one too. 5 grueling sets this time. 2-6, 6-3, 3-6, 6-4, 6-3.
Another epic. Over 4 hours, 9 minutes on this very court. Both guys apparently came into that match with some injury niggles, but they just battled through.
Yeah.
Sinner actually went up 2-1.
Even with cramp.
Yeah, despite suffering from cramp during the match, which shows his own toughness. But Alcaraz, again, found a way, rallied in the 4th and 5th. A key stat from the sources on that one was Alcaraz hitting way more winners, 65 to Sinner's 39. Suggests maybe Alcaraz was being more aggressive, dictating more, or taking risks that paid off. Though an important bit of context for that semifinal, Sinner was already guaranteed to become world number 1 after that tournament finished, no matter what happened against Alcaraz.
Interesting. You wonder if that changes the pressure dynamic slightly, knowing you've already secured the top spot.
It's a valid point people raise. Okay, moving back again, hard courts.
Yeah.
2024 Indian Wells semifinal, Alcaraz won 1-6, 6-3, 6-2. This was a big one because Alcaraz ended Sinner's absolutely perfect start to the season. Sinner was 16-0.
Right, that was a massive streak. Alcaraz stopped right there.
It was huge. And the first set, a total blowout. Sinner dominated 6-1. I think the winner count was like 6 for Sinner, 1 for Alcaraz.
Wow.
But the ATP source notes how Alcaraz fought through a really tough opening game in the second set, held serve, and from there, he just cut down the errors, found his rhythm in the rallies, and started mixing things up tactically. The source specifically mentions him returning from way back, like Medvedev territory.
Way behind the baseline.
Yeah, way back, trying to start points on the front foot, disrupt Sinner's flow. His mental strength was key. He kept pointing to his head after the match. And get this. He lost only 3 points on his serve in the entire final set. Just total dominance once he figured it out.
Incredible turnaround. And then, maybe the match that really put this rivalry onto the global stage for everyone, the 2022 U.S. Open quarterfinal. Alcaraz won again, 5 sets, 6-3, 6-7-7, 6-7-0, 7-5, 6-3.
Oh, an absolute classic. Everyone calls it one of the matches of the 2022 season. Finished ridiculously late, 2:50 a.m., after 5 hours and 15 minutes of just elite tennis and tireless effort, as the ATP source put it.
And Sinner was so close in that one, too, wasn't he?
He was so close, up 2-1, and he held a match point at 5-4 in the fourth set.
Match point. For Sinner to make his first slam semi,
yeah,
maybe go on to win the whole thing, become number one himself earlier, the what-ifs are huge.
Immense stakes in that moment. But Alcaraz saved it and won the next 4 games straight to steal the set. And incredibly, he did basically the same thing in the 5th set, came back from a breakdown to win 4 straight games again. Just relentless.
And Alcaraz went on to win his first slam title and become the youngest ever world number 1 after that tournament. That match was a launch pad. A user on Talk Tennis even said, like, don't forget this match, underlining how significant it was.
Exactly. So looking back at just those 5 battles, Rome, Beijing, Roland Garros 24, Indian Wells 24, U.S. Open 22, they really paint this picture, don't they? A rivalry defined by these razor-thin margins, huge momentum swings, incredible resilience from both guys. But with Alcaraz, lately anyway, finding a way in the biggest moments.
Definitely. And there were others too, right? Like Sinner won their first slam meeting at Wimbledon 22.
Right. And Sinner won their first ever final against each other in Umag on clay in 22. Alcaraz won their very first tour-level match way back in Paris in 21. So while Alcaraz has won the last 4, Sinner has beaten him on big stages before. It shows Alcaraz has had to evolve and adapt his game to get this recent upper hand.
It adds another layer, yeah. It's not just winning, it's problem-solving against your biggest rival over time.
Mm-hmm. And there was one fascinating statistic that popped up in a Reddit thread looking across all their matches. Breakpoint conversion?
Oh, yeah. What did it say?
So Sinner has converted 39 out of 81 breakpoint chances against Alcaraz. That's about 48%. Pretty good. But Alcaraz, he's converted only 32 out of 115 opportunities against Sinner. That's just 28%.
Wow, 28% versus 48%. That's a massive difference.
Yeah.
The Reddit user who posted that said it's incredible that Alcaraz still manages to lead the H2S despite this.
It really is incredible.
So what does that mean? Is Alcaraz just not creating good breakpoint chances?
Right.
Or is Sinner just unbelievably clutch saving breakpoints specifically against Carlos?
I think, based on watching them and what the reports say, it's probably more the latter. Sinner's serve under pressure, especially finding those lines out wide, has been phenomenal, particularly this tournament. It also suggests Alcaraz might be generating a lot of chances, maybe through relentless pressure and variety, but he's just not cashing them in as efficiently as Sinner is against him.
So Alcaraz must be winning more of the other key points, like hold points, crucial rally points, tie breaks maybe.
He must be, to offset that discrepancy. It definitely flags breakpoint conversion as a really crucial battleground to watch on Sunday.
Okay, so beyond the numbers, beyond the history, the rivalry is just so compelling because their styles are so different. Even their personalities seem quite contrasting. The sources call it a contrary matchup.
They really do. And that Reddit thread had some great descriptions. Physically, game style-wise, Alcaraz is seen as rigid, clean, precise, and well-built. He's got that explosive, aggressive game.
Right.
Super good forehand, pretty good backhand. He's not afraid to go forward, volleys very well, and has that great touch, mixing it up with drop shots. Just brings so much variety.
So a real all-court attacker, always looking to dictate, finish points fast.
Exactly. And the online discussions often compare his style, the attacking flair, the variety, the incredible movement, more to Federer than Nadal, despite, the Spanish connection and intensity he shares with Rafa. The Australian Open source really emphasizes his intensity and those high-speed shots as being key.
And Sinner. How's his style perceived in contrast?
Totally different profile. Sinner's described as lanky, extremely loose and fluid, and a little scrawny. But somehow he gets so much power from that frame. His game is seen as all-around solid, brutal returning, a superb backhand, that pinpoint shot-making plus sharp serving. And unlike Alcaraz looking for the quick kill, Sinner is often described as being more contented with playing longer points and relying on endurance. One Reddit user even argued he's more aggressive through the ball than Djokovic, just hitting with relentless pace and depth.
So Sinner's more the baseline powerhouse, relentless depth, pace, consistency, especially off that backhand wing, while Alcaraz uses a wider range of shots, looks to disrupt rhythm more.
That's a really good summary. And on clay, these contrasting styles are super interesting, right? Sinner's power and flatter hitting can be tricky with the higher bounce, but when he nails the timing, his depth just pins guys back. Alcaraz's variety, especially the drop shot, is a massive weapon on clay, but it needs perfect touch on the slower surface, otherwise it just sits up.
Right, easier to retrieve.
Exactly. And his volleys are more effective if he can really construct the point well to get to the net. It brings up that classic debate you see in the sources, higher ceiling versus higher floor. Alcaraz at his absolute peak with all the variety clicking, maybe untouchable. But Sinner's consistent baseline power gives him an incredibly high average level that's just so hard to break down point after point, especially in the long rallies you get on clay.
And what about their personalities? The sources touch on this too, right? As another layer.
They do. For Alcaraz, even though one Talk tennis user noted some inconsistency maybe in tactics and mental focus, sometimes perhaps linked to that story about his coach wanting him to play more percentage tennis, which Carlos apparently finds boring.
I love that anecdote. Fits the image, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
But generally, he's seen as having a very tough mentality, someone who really understands the game, which makes him special. The ATP source highlighted how he stayed strong mentally in those tough matches we talked about.
And Sinner.
Sinner, the Reddit thread, describes him as having incredible savviness and maturity on court. He often comes across as mentally very strong, especially when he's dictating and comfortable. Although some commenters, again on Reddit, have pointed to moments in the past where maybe he struggled to close out sets or seemed to crack under pressure. But that seems less common now, maybe.
And their public personas are different too. Sinner's generally seen as quieter, less outwardly emotional than Alcaraz. Some forum users on Reddit and the grandstand seem to really appreciate that, see it as humility.
Yeah, and that Talk Tennis forum had a comment describing Sinner, especially after his training during the ban, as a war machine, like relentless, focused, almost emotionless in his approach.
That war machine image is a great contrast to Alcaraz's more visible emotion and flair on court.
It really is. And a Talk Tennis user suggested that Sinner's solid, methodical play could be the thing that frustrates Alcaraz, potentially forcing errors if Carlos can't break through that consistency.
That's a fascinating dynamic, isn't it? Competing approaches, competing temperaments. How does all this fit into the bigger picture, the post-Big Three era?
Well, this is where the discussion really zooms out beyond just Sunday's match. The sources are clearly positioning this rivalry as the defining one for right now. Naturally, people are drawing comparisons to the legends. Alcaraz gets compared to Nadal's Spanish, intense, but also to Federer because of the attacking style, the variety, the movement.
Well, Sinner gets linked to Djokovic, solid baseline, great backhand, returning, mental strength, and maybe even someone like David Ferrer for that relentless consistency.
Exactly. Though some argue about the Alcaraz-Federer comp, saying Carlos's game isn't quite as effortlessly smooth, maybe, or he has to work harder for his points.
Sure, comparisons are never perfect, but they help frame their styles for fans of the last era.
And Novak Djokovic himself, who knows a thing or two about rivalries, weighed in. He acknowledged that while Alcaraz and Sinner are the two best players for sure at the moment, they obviously need, 10-plus years of winning slams to be in the same breath as the big three or four. But importantly, he added, they are great for tennis, both of them, and their rivalry is something our sport needs.
And Sinner seemed to echo that, didn't he? Saying tennis needs rivalries, and Alcaraz pushes him to be better.
Yeah, and Sinner had a really interesting comment about Alcaraz specifically. He said Carlos has charisma with that aura, that he brings people to the sport, and that maybe they share a similar kind of aura. It shows that mutual respect, despite the competition, and acknowledges their joint role in attracting new fans. They really are seen as the guys who have taken over men's tennis, as NBC Sports put it, inheriting that spotlight.
Okay, so with all this history, These contrasting styles, the whole context of them taking over the sport. What are the ultimate stakes on Sunday? It just feels like there's so much more riding on this than just the trophy, the Coupe des Mousquetaires.
It absolutely feels that way. Like, the grandstand source said this is their first Grand Slam final meeting. It's the one infinity stone missing from their rivalry collection. They've met everywhere else, quarters, semis, Masters finals, Tour finals, but never for the biggest prize in a major championship match.
And adding to that massive first, both guys come into this final with perfect records in Grand Slam finals.
That's a huge stake, yeah. Highlighted by the Australian Open source and the Talk Tennis forums, Alcaraz is 4-0 in major finals, Sinner is 3-0. One of those perfect records has to end on Sunday. The psychological weight of keeping that streak alive or having it broken against your biggest rival in your biggest match, that's immense.
This match also just cements their dominance over the sport right now, doesn't it? NBC Sports and the Australian Open point out that these two have collectively won the last 5 Grand Slams played going back to the start of 2024.
5 straight between them.
And this final guarantees they make it 6 in a row. It just unequivocally confirms they are the top 2, the guys winning the majors right now.
And for Sinner, specifically, the stakes involve the potential for something truly rare, historically speaking. If he wins Roland Garros, he would hold 3 of the 4 majors concurrently, the U.S. Open from late 24, the Aussie Open from early 25, and potentially Roland Garros now.
Putting him 3/4 of the way to holding all 4 slams at the same time. Something only a tiny handful of guys have ever done in the Open era. Or, as the grandstand put it, just one step away from a career Grand Slam, just needing Wimbledon.
And a Talk Tennis user really elaborated on this. If Sinner wins Sunday, he then has a shot at completing a calendar year Grand Slam, winning all 4 in the same calendar year if he wins Wimbledon and the U.S. Open later this year.
The Holy Grail, basically.
Pretty much. Or even winning Wimbledon and the U.S. Open would give him the non-calendar year Grand Slam, holding all 4 consecutively across 2 years. The potential hype and narrative around Sinner chasing those historic feats makes this Roland Garros final absolutely critical. It could launch a very special year for him.
And on Alcaraz's side, the stakes are just as high, just as historic. He's trying to defend his Roland Garros title, which only the absolute clay court legends have managed in the Open era.
Winning would also give him his 5th Grand Slam title at a remarkably young age. And there's that fascinating historical parallel someone found on the Talk Tennis forum. If Alcaraz wins on Sunday, he'd be 22 years, 1 month, and 3 days old.
Okay.
Which is the exact same age, down to the very day that Rafael Nadal was when he won his 5th Grand Slam title.
No way. That's incredible.
Isn't it? That kind of parallel to the King of Clay at Roland Garros, it adds this whole other layer of historical weight for Alcaraz.
And there's also the potential for that incredibly rare double if he wins here and then wins Wimbledon a few weeks later.
Indeed. As a Talk Tennis user pointed out, winning both Roland Garros and Wimbledon in the same year, only one man has done that in the Open era, Bjorn Borg.
Just Borg.
Just Borg. So if Alcaraz could pull that off, it would put him in truly elite, almost unique company.
Beyond the individual records and milestones, a lot of commenters seem to see this match as a really critical moment in the sort of battle for long-term dominance in men's tennis.
Yeah, multiple sources, the forums, the Australian Open piece, they talk about this as potentially defining who leads the race for total slams between these two, who might dominate the tour for the next, say, 2-3 years. A Sinner win, according to one user, would be a substantial pushback against Alcaraz's recent H2H edge and make that future slam count race feel much tighter.
There was even that speculation on Talk Tennis, wasn't there? That if Sinner can finally solve the Alcaraz issue, find a consistent way to beat his main rival, he could potentially go on a slam-winning streak we've not seen in any of our lifetimes.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah.
But it's based on the idea that Sinner seems to be beating pretty much everyone else relatively easily now, on all surfaces. If the only consistent roadblock is Alcaraz, then removing that roadblock could theoretically open the door for a period of just unprecedented dominance in the majors. It's a fascinating, if maybe slightly hyperbolic, take on the stakes.
Given all these layers, the history, the styles, the stakes, it's no surprise that there are really differing views among the sources and the fans about who's actually favored to win this thing.
Absolutely not. Sportskeeda mentions Alcaraz is slightly favored by the betting odds, and the arguments for Alcaraz usually center on that recent H2H dominance, the 4 straight wins, including on clay in Rome and their 5-setter here last year. His amazing 21-1 record on clay in 2025 is another huge point for him, and crucially, his almost perfect 5-set record, 12 wins, 1 loss in his career, is seen as a massive advantage if the match goes the distance, which their best battles often do. The grandstand really highlighted that 5-set record.
But the case for Sinner is just as compelling, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially given how he's played this tournament.
It really is. Arguments for Sinner point to his ridiculous current overall form, that pot racket, right? 47 wins in his last 49 matches. His consistency is just undeniable, reaching the final of every single tournament he's played since last August.
Every single one. Wow.
Every single one. Commenters note his higher floor on clay. Like, his standard level is just incredibly high and reliable, maybe less prone to dips than Alcaraz's can be. They also mention potentially more favorable playing conditions this year compared to their semifinal last year, maybe a bit quicker.
And that dominant run to the final, not dropping a set. It suggests he has the form, the momentum, maybe even the confidence to win this in straight sets, which would completely negate Alcaraz's 5-set advantage.
It really boils down to that classic debate you see reflected everywhere. The player with the higher ceiling, Alcaraz's peak, his variety, his comeback magic, versus the player with the higher floor. Sinner's relentless consistency, his power, just how hard he is to break down point after point. And on clay, the slower surface, what points are longer. Physical and mental endurance are just paramount. The argument for Sinner's higher floor, his current flawless form, it's very persuasive for a lot of people.
It's clear that while Alcaraz might have the historical edge, the recent H2H and that incredible clay record, Sinner's current form, his consistency, his dominance through this specific draw make him equally, maybe even more dangerous right now. It feels like a genuine toss-up.
Djokovic kind of summed it up perfectly, didn't he? Called them the 2 best players for sure at the moment and predicted they're going to have very successful careers, lifting the big trophies quite often. This final is just the clearest proof of that prediction coming true right now.
So to try and wrap up this deep dive, we've journeyed through the very different paths Sinner and Alcaraz took to get here. One, a picture of flawless dominance. The other, a real testament to resilience, adaptability. We've relived some of their incredible past fights, seeing how often these things turn on just a few crucial points, revealing the mental strength of both guys, though Alcaraz has had that recent edge. We've broken down their contrasting styles, their personalities, which just make their clashes so fascinating tactically and psychologically.
And we've fully unpacked the massive historical stakes that just lift this match way beyond a single title. It's their first Slam final meeting, meaning one perfect major final record has to go. It cements their collective dominance over the sport right now. For Sinner, it's potentially a huge step towards holding 3 majors at once, maybe even launching a calendar Slam bid. For Alcaraz, it's a chance to defend Roland Garros, grab his 5th major incredibly young, maybe keep alive that ultra-rare shot at the Borg double with Wimbledon.
It's really no wonder this matchup is being called the best rivalry in tennis right now. By understanding all these layers from the sources, the history, the styles, the different routes here, the monumental stakes, hopefully you, the listener, can appreciate the drama and the significance of Sunday's match on a much, much deeper level.
And it leaves us with a pretty compelling question for you to think about as you tune in, right? Will Jannik Sinner's incredible, untouched in sets run through this tournament, his consistent power game, finally break Alcaraz's 4-match win streak against him? Will he be the one to end Carlos's perfect Slam final record?
Yeah.
Or will Carlos Alcaraz's proven resilience, his tactical variety, his knack for delivering in the biggest moments, especially recently against Sinner, especially in 5-setters, allow him to extend his dominance over Sinner and really solidify his place at the very top of this defining rivalry? And maybe even bigger picture, what does the outcome of this one match truly signal for the race for supremacy and the landscape of, say, the next 5 Grand Slams?
A lot to chew on as we wait for what promises to be an absolutely historic battle. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the Roland Garros final between Alcaraz and Sinner.